welcome to the Prosperous Empath. Kat here, and I'm so happy and excited for today's conversation and appreciate you being here with me. I feel honored to have Kiva Slade on the podcast today. Kiva and I actually connected, I believe, initially over on LinkedIn. We actually used to be neighbors in the Maryland area, and we had joined a online networking group together. And if I'm not mistaken, Kiva reached out to me to connect, and we connected for virtual coffee and have stayed in touch ever since. And we just share so many values, and our approach to business feels so value and holistically aligned. And I have no doubt that you will agree as we dive into today's conversation. So a little bit more about Kiva. Kiva is the owner and founder of the 516 Collaborative, specializing in providing comprehensive support to small business owners at the intersection of data and operations. She has a background with a master's in public administration and certifications as director of operations and online business manager. And she brings over 20 years of experience from the public and private sectors. And she's also worked on the Hill as a legislative director for a member of Congress. She has a really rich and full background of professional and life experience. And I really love how that blends into our conversation on today's episode about strategic business planning, because something I appreciate about business planning for empaths is that it often looks a little different. It is typically more holistic in nature, and we approach the conversation around key performance indicators or KPIs a little differently, because we get to include all the aspects of our business, all the qualitative and quantitative aspects that we want to measure. And based on that holistic approach, Kiva supports her clients in really developing holistic KPIs that track what we want to be measuring as empath entrepreneurs in business. It is such a delicious and vulnerable conversation, which honestly, I would expect nothing else from Kiva. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. And before we dive in, I just want to be sure to add that if you have yet to join us for one of our monthly non-networking power hours, it is a delicious, nourishing, and deeply supportive community for empath entrepreneurs to come to meet some values-aligned creators and to network in a very holistic and supportive way. So we will include the link for the next event in our show notes for today's episode. We would love to have you join us on Monday, October 23rd at 12 noon Eastern Time. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the Prosperous Empath podcast, designed especially for empaths and highly sensitive entrepreneurs just like you who are committed to achieving holistic success. I'm your host, Catherine Wood, Master Certified Coach, author, mastermind leader, and founder of Unbounded Potential, a boutique coaching firm for empathic entrepreneurs. I'm on a mission to bring empathy back into the world of business. Each episode will focus on achieving more by doing less through leveraging empath-friendly leadership practices, boundaries, rituals, and systems, all the while continuing to care deeply about ourselves, others, and the world around us. If you are committed to joyful living and running a conscious business, but amassing wealth while doing so, proving that you can have both in a society that tells you you can't, then you are in the right place. Join me here each week to find out how. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review so you won't miss an episode. Plus, you'll find all the show notes and helpful resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Hi, Kiva.
Hey there, Catherine. How are you?
I'm great. I've been looking forward to this conversation for months because I know we scheduled it well before both of our summer breaks. And I was just thinking, like when you and I first met, we lived in neighboring towns.
Exactly.
But now I'm in Boston. You're still in Maryland, and I'm excited to hear about kind of where you are versus, where you were in your business when we first met. Because I think a lot of things have changed for you. We've both started podcasts since we first connected, which is fun. So to kick us off, I'd love for you to share your pronouns with my audience. And then I'd love to hear a little bit about your story.
Yeah, most definitely. So yes, we were in neighboring towns, and actually I've been spending time in South Carolina for the last year. So you went north, I went south.
But both by the water.
Yes, both by the water, returning to my roots because I grew up in New Jersey near the water. So it was, the water is a happy place. So yeah, my pronouns are she and her. A little bit about me and my business. My business is a 516 collaborative, which really has evolved, really focuses on working with women entrepreneurs, but really along the lines of a strategic thought partner. We focus on operations, we focus on data, and we also focus on mindset because so much of the work that I do, whether it's in the consulting space or in the actual day-to-day of a business, there's mindset work and things that go into that to even get my clients to where they need to be in order to make those necessary changes. So it feels like there's some level of coaching and level of consulting in the work that I do, but it's really important that I feel for women entrepreneurs in particular. We always hear about wage gaps and things of that sort, and entrepreneurialism is one way. It's a vehicle for a lot of women to close those gaps. However, for most of us, the businesses end after 3 or 5 years, or we're in service and based industries and they may not pay as well. So I think it's important that they focus on operations, focus on having a strong foundation to that business so that there is actual staying power and earning power. So, yeah.
I don't know if I shared this with you, but I think it was last year. I actually checked out your website because I wanted to refer you to one of my clients. And I was like, oh, I think Kiva's pivoted. Like, I think that she's doing some different things now because it seems like your service offering has really shifted over the past several years. I'm curious what that process was like for you.
Yeah, that I feel like it's been a part of just life shifts as well. Initially doing a lot of like online business management, director of operations. I started to learn that I did not necessarily, as much as I loved growing people, I didn't necessarily like managing teams of people in which I did not hire them. And in many cases, I could not fire them. So for me, that started to become a part of the work that I was farming out and carving out as stuff that I didn't want to do. It was very uncomfortable. And oftentimes in small businesses in particular, but I think there's this idea of how can I pack as much as I can into a job description and find this magical person that normally does not exist because there's typically like 3 to 4 positions in that one. And so really to create environments where people could show up as their best selves, could show up in their strengths, it was starting to become very, very challenging and having to hire and sometimes at just wages and things that just are like, seriously, this is what we're doing now. So I started really feeling like that wasn't something I wanted to do. And really started to do a return to my roots. I really remember like just things that used to light me up, things in grad school that lighted me up, projects and things. And they always focused on data. They always focused on, operations. How do things run better? I am that person when I'm out. If you're with me and we're at a restaurant, I can literally tell you how they can improve things just through my experience sitting there. And sometimes I share, not always wanting people. I don't think they always want to receive it, but it doesn't stop me from sharing it. But really, through that time, the change has really been, I think, more about understanding my own strengths and how I like to best show up and what feels good for me. And I don't say that in the sense of I don't do anything that doesn't feel good. But if we get to make this choice, what are the things that do light us up, and how do I do more of the things that light me up? Because then I'm obviously working within my, strengths and in that area for myself that I'm working in my best skills. So it's really been a journey of self discovery. And through this self discovery has been a journey of pivoting of service. We learned about me.
It sounds like you underwent the process in your own business that I imagine you've supported many of your clients in undergoing.
Absolutely. And it's sometimes hard, I think, to turn that mirror back on ourselves, to look at our own business and say, what do we keep? What do we pare down? What do we strip away? How can I better delegate? What things am I doing that I should not be doing? Where are there ways that we can improve the things that we do? And yeah, turning the mirror back on yourself. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. And it's like what's that saying? The cobbler's children have no shoes. And you're sometimes like, oh my goodness gracious. Like, how are we helping someone in this area? And it's a hot mess. But it really was helpful for me to just start to hone in on those things. And even now there's some shifts that are afoot. I recently went through a weekend certification for coaching. And it's funny.
Amazing.
Yeah, I thought about you like through this whole experience because I'm starting a program in January. So by the end, I'll come out ACC credentialed, and I was thinking of
Yay.
you because you and a former client are both master, coaches. And I have another former client who's PCC. She has all the things, she just hadn't submitted her paperwork. And I was just like, I thought about that and just our conversations and interactions. And I'm going through Valerie Burton's CAP Institute, Coaching in Positive Psychology. And so that the focus itself on just the positive psychology and understanding our thoughts and the power of those thoughts and negative thoughts versus positive thoughts and things of that sort. So yeah, again, just to even better serve clients, but also in some instances, just better serve clients in those areas that they don't realize also need to be serviced in order for your business to do well. I think people like to create false line of demarcation around personal and business. And the reality is for many of us, if one or the other is out of whack, typically there's something that's going on that you need to pay attention to because it is going to impact the other one. So there's some additional changes happening and looking to just incorporate that more in my work.
Oh, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to hear that for you. I feel like that's something that I just imagined you were going to become a coach since our first connection.
Oh, so much to me.
So I love that you're getting the credential. And honestly, I think I've shared with you that I used to be a coach trainer in one of my roles. And I think that there's so much value in getting a coaching certification, regardless of whether or not you intend to be a coach, because the skill set of coaching, the skill set of being an active listener, of asking open-ended questions, they are learned skill sets that can support in so many other aspects of business.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I remember what's that? There was a book, The Question Behind the Question, and it was talking about, just those open-ended questions and just even that and how I would ask questions of my clients, even before this certification. It just is a difference as to how you get them to think and their responses. And just last week, I was working on a strategy session with a client, and it was so sweet because she said, so I know you're preparing our report and how I can move forward. She's like, but please include options for me and you, because the way you've made me think during these sessions, she said, I need to keep you in my life. And I was just like, oh, that just means so much to me. Like that. We sometimes don't know, obviously, what we don't know, but that ability to help people think deeper and in some cases even broader than what they were thinking their impact could be, that's that's the thing. Like, it gets you excited and gets me up. It's like, yeah, because I think sometimes as women in particular, we kind of think small, and there's ways to think bigger that don't necessarily mean more of us. It's just how we put things in place that we can have a broader impact, that again, not stretch ourselves. So yeah, it was really exciting though for her to say that.
I love that. Well, I wanna step back for a moment because something you said, well, I loved, and I'm curious how it applies to your work because you said, so much of what you have experienced and see in clients is how much the personal impacts the business and vice versa. And you've made a lot of changes on both of those sides. Like before we hit record, you were talking about how you're off Instagram, you're mostly off Facebook, you've been very limited with LinkedIn, you took a pause on the podcast, you are spending a lot more time in South Carolina. Like those are a lot of lifestyle changes and business changes. And I wonder how they've been strategic and how they have kind of um, supported your trajectory or clarity around where you're heading.
Yeah, I think this actually goes back to probably around COVID. I blame COVID for it. Let's say that. My kids are 18 months apart, and I homeschooled them from the beginning. So COVID had my daughter, who's the oldest, start at home virtual. So on the day I turned 50, we actually packed up the car and the attached U-Haul because both of my kids had to leave the house at the same day because they were only a grade apart to both head off to college. So I'm 50. It's the morning of my birthday. We're driving to North Carolina to drop off child number one, and then proceed to head on to Louisiana to drop off child number two, which in my mind, let's be honest, many of us are planners. I had another year with child number two before they were going to need to go to school. None of that went according to plan. So I joke that it wasn't strategic, but maybe it was. And so in that way, it felt like just a lot of life coming at me at the same time, like a lot of life change and shift and all these things. And there was therapy. There was a lot of that was already going on. In addition to that, there's just been some personal marital things going on. So it's like I've had to do some excavation, is what I've been calling it, and dig deeper into me and understanding me. And also, in some ways, not redefining, but rediscovering me. And especially as a woman who 20 years ago, I was a legislative director on Capitol Hill. I worked then as a policy, manager at a nonprofit. And I got married and had kids and stayed home for 20 years. Like, what do I do? Who am I? What defines me? What do I still like to do? I knew I didn't want to go back into politics. So there was a lot of what I knew I didn't want to do, but I felt like there was a lot of me that also needed rediscovering to who I am and who I was. And like on my phone, I have this picture of my screensaver is a picture of me when I was probably, I don't know, about 7 or 8. And I have this look where it's a school picture, but I look determined, but I also look a tad bit, if I'm honest, devilish. So it's like I'm looking like I have spunk is what it is. And I don't think that in all of those roles, mom, wife, homeschool teacher, whatever else my kids needed me to be, I don't think I focused on that young girl who had spunk and had some, chutzpah about her. And it felt like a lot over the last 2 years has been my business is shifting just because of excavations that took place. So I don't know if it was strategic. It wasn't strategic by my design, but I think based on the circumstances, it has become strategic because I have been very intentional as to who I am, understanding how I show up. What do I need to own in terms of what I've done, I've said, how I, do anything that I do, but also what is not mine to own. And I think that's been a big shift for me because as a person who definitely empathic, you're like, I want my business, like my clients' businesses to do all this amazing things, but I've learned I can't want that more for them than they want that for themselves. And I feel like that has been one of the largest kind of shifts business wise is that starting to take that step back and realize where true ownership lies in terms of what I can own in the business versus what they have to own in the business. And that when I stay in my lane, it encourages them to stay in their lane or sometimes encourage force. You take whichever word you like. But as long as I'm staying in mine and owning what I need to own, it has allowed me to show up better, but it also has allowed me to have a much clearer understanding of what my capacity is. And then also capacity, not only in the work, but capacity for change. Like there's just some things, and at the end of the day, it's not my business. And so like the level of change that you can affect, it hits a ceiling at some point in time. And I had a choice to make, continue hitting that ceiling and getting a headache and, like lumps on my head, or know where the ceiling was and understand where to stop. And I feel like that part has been strategic, but it's come through, again, just some other things in life that it's like, what's really important and what is meaningful and what matters. And then realizing that, and I think I still see this with so many of my clients because we're building something, but we lose sight of balance. And I use that word loosely because balance can look different for everyone, but finding time to still, play with your kids, read a book, whatever it is that you like to do that brings you back to a place of calm, that also needs to take place and build into your life and not just focus on building this business that at the expense of, in a lot of cases, lots of other things that are also important to you. So again, finding what seems like whatever your even keel is. So yeah, I hope that answers that because I felt like I probably gave you more than I was going to.
No, it was perfect. I was laughing or smiling over here on the inside as you were saying that, like, you didn't know like that you weren't connected with your fire or your chutzpah, because I'm like watching you on this screen, and like for those of you who aren't seeing Kiva right now, she's seated in a fiery red desk chair with white accents. I've never seen a desk chair like this in my life. Like it screams personality and fieriness. So it seems only natural that you would reconnect with those parts of who you are.
Yeah. And it has felt good. It's felt freeing to go back to what we were saying before. And I don't think sometimes you realize that you need it to be freed until you are free.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that is kind of a really beautiful segue into what I'm excited to kind of dig in a little deeper with you. And it's like this idea of how do we strategically business plan as empaths? Because I think so often as empaths, we are following someone else's rule book, or building our business someone else's way, or listening to the louder voice or the louder wisdom or the more assertive, aggressive, fill in the blank guidance versus really claiming the space and the grace to connect with our own intuition, with our own inner knowing, with our own path. And it sounds like you've been doing a lot of that deep work for yourself and that you support clients in doing that same work.
Absolutely. And you've hit all the nails on the head because those are the things that really they grab our attention, and they sound good. Like in our soundbite kind of generation, like they check all the boxes. They make it that make sense. But I think when it comes to strategic planning, like you said, really starting with, I start my clients with, what's your mission, vision, and values? Like literally, what is it that you feel your business is designed to do? And trust me, if it's some kind of, I don't know, pie in the sky, or it's something that just sounds like it's been cut and paste, I'm digging deeper into understanding, and for them to also understand, like, is this really your mission? Is this really the vision that you see for your business 5 years from now? And then what are those values? And it has caught some clients off guard. They're like, why are my values important? Because that's going to determine who you work with and who's attracted to work with you versus who isn't. And I think it's really, really important to know what those are. And I feel like it almost reminds me, like when I do strategic planning with business owners, is when you were little and you went bowling and they put up the bumper guards so that your ball would not go in the gutter, because what kid wants their ball to go in the gutter? But most kids aren't big enough to push the ball to go down the alley in a straight line anyway. So the bumper guards are there to keep the ball in that space. And I feel like that with strategic planning, after we go through mission, vision, and values, we really start digging into key components of your business. What do you want it to look like in terms of operations, in terms of your team, in terms of your finances, professional and personal development, customer service, really looking at each of those parts of your business, but understanding how those all feed into the larger ecosystem that is your business. And talking through those, but then also we set up KPIs. Like, how do we measure that we were successful in this? And I think when you have those components, you have this tangible report document, file that you can go back to when the talking heads, the squawk boxes, all the things that are drawing that other attention, you can go back to when you had moment of silence that you gave yourself, where you actually committed to this, and remind yourself, reflect. Okay, this is what I said I was going to do. And this is how this is how I'm going to build this. Is it written in stone and chiseled like, 10 commandments on rocks? No. Will there be some changes? Absolutely. However, just like that ball going down that little alley, it may go from one bumper to the next one and kind of zigzag. But the reality is it still stays inside this confined space. And that's what growth is looking like. It's not this, I'm going to jump over here and do this, and then I'm going to jump over here and do this, and then I'm going to do this. And then you're frustrated because nothing is working and everything feels haphazard, or you're frustrated because there's a lot of half-done stuff. And so really being consistent and having a compass to go back to remind yourself, where's that north that I was heading towards? Okay, that's what this is. I'm going to go back and focus my energies here, because this is really what we know is going to bring about that growth. And I think it helps because it limits the ability to look and like that desire to look what's going on in all the other lanes in the bowling alley. Like, we don't need to know what the people with the purple ball are doing versus the people with the orange ball. What's your ball doing as it goes down that lane? And that's ultimately where we have to stay, because I think as empaths, we get burned out, we get stressed out, we get like all the outs of that come from listening to all of these other voices and forgetting in many cases, where's our north? Because it may not be the same as someone else's north. And understanding that's okay. It's not meant to be anybody else's, it's yours. It
Mm-hmm.
is solely for you. And whatever that, the what's that? The pace of the growth, whatever the length of time that you need to devote to that, really just getting everybody honed in and focused with real goals. Like, I don't know, I want to have more sales next year. Okay, let's talk about that. Define for me what is more sales. Like, let's get specific, put some numbers to those things, and really be able to map out. I want to make $50,000 more. Okay, then here we go. Let's pull out the spreadsheet. This is what you do now. This is how much you're doing this. This is how much this brings in. So for you to make $50,000 more, this is what we're going to need to do. How does that feel? And like, I feel like too much work, Kiva. Okay, then. So let's dig a little deeper. So it's like, you have to then start thinking. But if you don't know what that looks like, it's easy to say you want to have this or you want to do that. But there's things that come with all of those things. And I think in this culture that we're in, especially, oh, such and such had $100,000 launch of their new yada, yada, yada. And it's like, okay, let's peel the curtain back. So they've been talking to this audience that they have for the last 10 years. Okay. And you've been talking to your audience for 2 months. You're on page 1. They're in chapter 10 of this book. Like, let's compare what needs to be compared. So there is a level of reality checking that has to happen in a lot of those strategy sessions, but it's done in a loving way. But there is that reality of like, I need you to understand you can have that $100,000 launch. It just may not be right now. It may be in 5 years after you have done this, and this, and then it's like, let's put those things in perspective, because it seems like there's a lot of Kool-Aid being served. And I think everyone wants a cup of it, but you really have to understand what comes with that Kool-Aid. So,
yeah. I mean, I love this conversation, and there's a theme that's just like coming up for me as you're speaking, that I think one of the aspects of being an empath entrepreneur that really sets us apart is our willingness to take our own medicine. And so as I hear you supporting your clients in getting really clear about their KPIs, ensuring that they are in integrity with their mission, vision, and values, and really challenging the pivots along the way and whether they're in alignment with their own North Star. Like, I hear you doing that in your own journey. And I absolutely appreciate that. I'm not surprised at all. And it makes me even more sure that this is why your clients are successful, because you're practicing what you preach and what you teach. And I really appreciate that. And I want to talk about KPIs because something I also appreciate about being a conscious entrepreneur is that often our KPIs look different. We quantify them in different ways. And I'm just curious how you might notice that, or how you might approach developing KPIs with clients, especially if they identify as empaths or are mission oriented, which I think many empath entrepreneurs are mission driven.
Yeah, no, I love that question. And it's so true, because a lot of times I'll hear, like, let's say with a number, like they want to do X. And I'm like, let's talk about what your ideal week looks like. How do you like to show up? What feels good for you? And then they tell me, I don't know, maybe I only want to work 25 hours a week. Okay, that sounds good. And is that 25 hours like with client work, or is that 25 hours also including the time spent in your business? It's like, oh, let me think about that. So there's that conversation that has to happen around what that 25 defines. But once we get to that understanding of what's going to be like billable hours, we start really then tackling that number and kind of backing into it. And it really starts to come down to, wow, I thought I might wanted to have done that, but it's more important to me to not go above this cap of hours. And so my KPI is I only want to work 25 hours a week, and we're going to be measuring that. And it's like, because that actually winds up feeling a heck of a lot better and more in alignment than whatever somebody else told you could have as a financial goal when you have to see those trade-offs. But also just understanding like what ultimately are the things that bring you joy, and are those things that we can measure in your business. Like for some people, they like having conversations. Their business is built on networks and referrals from those networks. Kiva, I want to have 3 conversations every 2 weeks. Okay. So we're having 6 conversations a month. Okay. That's a fine and suitable KPI. You know, then that you want to hit 6 conversations a month. And based on your past history, if you have 6 conversations a month, you are guaranteed maybe 2 leads out of those 6 conversations. And those 2 leads are all you need because you'll close one of them. And you're like, that 50% closing rate is all I need for my business to stay where it is, the nice rate of growth that I'm experiencing. Those are all great KPIs. I think sometimes we get into this like, I have to send out X amount of emails and they have to have this open rate and it has to have this. And no. A KPI is anything that you want to measure in your business. If that's 25 hours a week and you don't want to go over that, that's your KPI, And I think it comes down to that understanding of what is important to you again as the measurement. And it's, we can get into the economics, leading and lagging indicators and things of that sort. But even that, there's no one size fits all.
Mm-hmm.
There's no industry standards. Like there are things that we can count as, cost per lead. Like, okay, yeah, we could start to calculate that and we can understand like, is that leading or is that lagging? But the thing about it is ultimately leading and lagging indicators are determined by you, your business. What industry are you in? There's so many different factors. And I think sometimes we start to either have 2 reactions, either we want to have a KPI for everything. Don't do that. Okay. Or we don't want to have a KPI for anything. Don't do that. It's like finding out again, where's that spot for you? And that spot will change. At the beginning, I tell you, focus. If you're just starting out or if you're not at a place where revenue is consistent in your business, okay, let's start simple marketing and sales KPIs. Okay. How many people are you having conversations with? All right, then that's it. We can start there. We can start to build from there. How many of those conversations turn into a proposal is sent? Then how many are those actual, dealt with an actual closed proposal and you've won that contract? But that's all you need to focus on until there's consistent revenue in the business. Then yeah, we can start to branch out. But again, what's important to you? And what are those true indicators for you as to what is the health and or success of your business? Those KPIs are not going to be the same for Nike, who is going to measure some very different things than what you're going to measure in your business. So really being strategic about what's important, what do you want to keep track of? And then actually keeping track of it. If it's 25 hours a week and you find yourself at the end of 3 months that, you know what, I hit 22 and a half and I was feeling burnt out. I said 25, but 22.5 is my sweet spot. And that's where I'd like to stay. Great. Let's adjust that for the next quarter. The money was still good. Everything else in the business felt good. But that extra 2.5 hours was stretch. So be it. We change it, and now we're hitting 22 and a half. After another quarter, you're like, this is where I need to be. Great. Do we need to make any adjustments to this? Any money, anything else that's going to be affected by it? no, then let's just keep going with this and it could be a season in your life that might change. And then you're like, hey, that 2.5 hours, let's get that back. I'm ready for it. Then that's fine. Maybe it's reduce another 2.5 hours to see how 20 hours a week feel, whatever that is. But again, don't find yourself measuring everything or determining a KPI for everything, but also let's not measure anything at all. Okay. We have to have something that lets us know, are we going in the right direction?
Totally. I mean, I just want to clarify for those of our listeners who aren't familiar with KPIs. KPIs stand for key performance indicators. And I love, I guess what I hear in you is, in your sharing, Kiva, is like this permission to have KPIs that reflect your lifestyle preferences or your values, to measure what's important to you, not industry standards or egoic based metrics. And then I also hear something else that I think is really important to have a healthy sense of appreciation for. And it's the idea that, your KPIs are going to differ based on the season of business that you're in, whether you're in startup or established or scaling on, like, it's going to differ. And I remember when I started out as a business owner, like I was still working in the government. I was still an economist, and I worked every minute that I could because I was not only passionate about getting out of my day job, but it was inspiring. And I do not regret those days of taking client calls at 7 a.m. and 12 noon and 6 p.m. But it was what it required for me. It was the KPIs that really set me up to be where I am today.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, understanding the ebb and flow of it all. When you're scaling, we're going to have to look at some different numbers, and your luck's 20 hours, 25 hours a week may not be where you are. There may need to be a bump up to 35 hours a week. And maybe some of that time is still billable, and some of it is, hey, we're building out lots of stuff in the back end of this business that needs my oversight and my hands on. So it looks different. And yes, we do have that permission to absolutely measure what we want to measure, but also understand, I want that permission with that flexibility of it's going to shift. And when it shifts, that's a good thing. That means you've basically achieved what you were looking to achieve, and you're off now to the next portion of that. You've graduated from the bumper things. Now you're at the little rolly thing for the bowling alley where you can roll your ball down it and it can go. So you're graduating. You're not fully instrument-less completely where you're rolling the ball yourself, but it's a step and it's a process. And I think that's the important thing, is understanding, like, running a business, building a business, having a team, like impacting people's lives. Like, these are all part of the journey. Enjoy each of these parts of the journey instead of like the focus on the destination. I have a 6-figure business. I have a 7-figure business. And then you don't enjoy, though, any of the things that got you to that point. And I want people to do a better job of enjoying the journey, because there are lessons in growth that happens at each of these stages and in seasons. And they are all designed to set us up for the next thing that's to come.
Yeah, for sure. And if we're so busy rushing towards the destination, we'll miss the lessons along the way. And, what they say, like, new levels, similar doubles. So if you don't learn the lesson in this season of business, like, you may just miss it when it presents its very familiar face in the next season.
Yeah, and it might cost you more the next season. Like, you might have had a small thing to pay here, and now you're like, what? Yeah, pay attention.
You know what? I so appreciate you saying that it may cost more, because I think one of my lessons in early entrepreneurship was like the consequence of being perfectionistic in my business. And at this stage, I am so much more committed to progress over perfection. But I forget that in every new challenge I take on, in every new project I commit to, perfectionism still rears its head. So my greatest lesson was actually a couple years ago when I bought a house in Tacoma Park, and all I saw was projects. Everywhere I looked, Kiva, like I saw, ooh, I want to beautify this. Ooh, I want to build a fence. Ooh, I want to repave the driveway. Ooh, we, add this challenge. I want to throw all this money at this. And it was a great year of business for me. So I had a lot of disposable income, and push comes to shove. Like the consequence of not being mindful of my perfectionism was I threw so much money at my house because I wasn't keeping my own perfectionism in check. And I think we do this all the time in business. We think we've learned the lesson when in reality, like we rushed past the lesson. We breezed past the lesson. We did not embody and like truly embrace the impact of the lesson that we've faced.
Absolutely. And I love that example because I feel like it lately, one of the things I've had to do with clients is like software audits. Because we're always looking for perfection, the all-in-one software, the all-in-one, like we go to the Home and Depot or Lowe's of software and we're feeling like, where's the thing that does all the things that I need it to do? And we get it. And then it's like, oh, but I also pay for this and I pay for this. So you have three things that all can be used to sign an electronic document. Yeah, but I don't use any of those. I actually use this. And you're like, so you really have four things that can, it's like you open the drawer and you're like, yeah, so I have four different hammers. No, they're all still steel-faced hammers. No, none of them are for texturizing. I just was at the store and I thought I didn't have a hammer, so I got another hammer. And it's like, yeah,
Kiva, you don't know me. You don't know me.
What'd you say? I feel so seen, right? But it's like that's the thing that we do. And so many clients recently, it's like we're having these conversations and it's like, yeah, so I might want to audit that. Because in many cases, we've either paid for something, AppSumo, we got a lifetime on whatever it is, we're not using it. And then we're paying monthly for some other things. And it's like, it's costing us. It
Totally.
is. But we don't take that time to stop. What's the lesson here? What are we learning here? And sometimes it's that understanding that, you know what, there is no all-in-one. We're going to have to connect this to this, and that works the best for us. And we have to understand that and realize it. And, I say this with all the love in my heart because I recently, well, it's technically not a 3-in-1. It was 3 different things, but purchased a Craftsman reciprocating saw, drill driver, and impact wrench or something like that. And someone took out my mailbox on Friday. And you ever purchase something like, I'm going to get to use that? I knew part of the mailbox was going to need some, part of the wood was dry rotted. I was like, I'll get to it. Well, when someone takes out your mailbox, you don't have to get to it. Like it is now. Like you're going to do this. And so it took me 3 trips to Lowe's that day. But I am excited to share that I repaired it, like cut the wood with the saw and did all the things. But could I have paid somebody to do it? Absolutely. I don't know if they would have done it that day. I'm not sure. I didn't do a cost benefit analysis, but I had decided for myself that I was going to DIY it because I was like, I have these tools that I haven't opened in the box that I purchased over a month ago, and I'm going to use this. And so sometimes that's it also in our businesses. Like sometimes there are things you're going to need to farm out. And there's sometimes I think that we need to roll up our sleeves and learn how to do it so that when we do hire it out, we know what to expect and we have a better understanding of how much is involved in it. So either A, we pay adequately, or B, we also have realistic expectations around turnaround time on that service. So, but yeah, home improvement projects are a great example of ways that things could get away from you quickly.
And it's such a good metaphor for business, right? Because we so often hear the lessons like hire out, delegate, like you shouldn't be doing this. And, all fair points. And like, if you're just paying at the expense of learning how to be more efficient or effective, um, then are you really learning? Like, are you really leading?
Exactly. You're
Well,
like, I'm just shoveling the stuff over to you to do it because I can pay you less. No one's assessing. Do we even need to do that? Is that something? Nah, let's just pay her to do it, And it's like,
yeah.
yeah. But at some point, we do have to come face to face with that little new devil and be like, so you didn't even need to exist. Nope, I didn't, And it's like, oh, so we actually didn't even need this step or this tool that goes with this step. Oh, oh, okay. We
Mhm.
come to that realization, but you're right. If we don't, we're now probably paying for that multiple times over in various pieces and parts of our business that definitely is funding that could go different ways.
Mhm.
And, like, yeah.
And I feel like this truly comes full circle to where we started this conversation about knowing your mission, vision, and values, getting really clear on what your KPIs are, what you're prioritizing, so you can be really sure, like feel really at peace in your body that the investments, the choices, the business decisions you're making as a CEO are in service of your vision rather than just meeting someone else's advice, you know, recommendations, louder, like more
Yeah.
confident, aggressive, like
All those
the
things.
wisdom
Yeah.
of the day, because that wisdom of the day will consistently change, but
Exactly.
your mission, vision, and values will clarify.
Yeah. But I think there was something else you just touched on was that listening to our own intuition. I think that we sometimes allow that to take a back seat to these wiser gurus and things. And there's power in that. And I had to come to this realization myself in my own business. And really, that's one of the things. I have this, I don't see him right now. I have this picture of this bear. And there was this group I was in, and you had to pick an animal. And you didn't know what was behind it, but what was behind the bear was trust yourself. And that was so poignant for me because I had to start leaning back into that and trusting myself. And I think that for me, at least, I was taking in a lot from other people. And it was like, oh, okay. And there was times when I was doing things that didn't feel good in my body. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I think there's a better way, or I just don't like this.
Mm-hmm.
But it felt like, well, if you don't do this, like your business is going to fall apart and you're just like, have wasted all this time. And it was like that coming back to acknowledge how myself was telling me, don't do this. This is not in alignment with you and in who you are. And it was like that ability to start to trust myself. And last year, like those were my words. Like, it was like, what's your word? No, it's not a word. It's to trust myself because that part about our intuition, and we didn't get to where we are just by happenstance. And the experiences that we've had, the lessons we've learned along the way, they still hold value. Even if you haven't been an entrepreneur since you came out of your mama's womb, it doesn't matter. All of that is still valuable to where you are right now. And I think when we put that on the back burner, it also leads us to those stress and friction points where it's like, what am I doing this for? And does this matter to me? And if so, why? Because it's not feeling good. And I think that there's power in that we kind of negate in some instances by putting it on the back burner. Sorry, I
Mm.
wanted to share
I'm
that.
so glad you did. I could not agree more. I was chuckling over here because like I noticed that I often question my own intuition because uh so many of the people I chat with, even still, like they talk louder than me. They speak more quickly than me. They're more like they're more just like confident from the get-go, like just kind of like in my face, like, oh, you should do this and like this. And I get seduced sometimes. And then I have to remind myself, like, Kat, like, you've been doing this for a decade. Like, you are a master certified coach, sweetheart. Like, there's a reason you're here, and it's not because someone else is doing it better than you.
Absolutely. Yes. I love that.
And now I know that about myself, like I know about myself that I often want to hire my clients. I often want to work with the people that I get on the phone with because I am a yes person. Like I see potential. I see possibility. Like I'm just a yes person, and I just have to keep my yes in check.
I love that. Can we get that like on a t-shirt? Keep my yes in check. I'm serious. Like I want that or a sticker or something. Okay. So like when you open up that stream of income, let me know.
Sounds good. Well, it's been so fun to reconnect, Kiva. I've truly been looking forward to this conversation for a while. As we wrap, like I would love to hear what supported you in becoming a prosperous empath.
Oh, that's such a great question. I feel like there's so much, but I will really say a pivotal moment for me was Carol Dweck's Mindset. Like reading that book was like, okay. Things that you kind of like heard throughout existence and things of that sort, but you just like for someone to put into words growth versus fixed and to provide examples. I just was like, it just made so much sense. And like what you were just even saying about, I see the possibilities. And that was such a thing that I've had to grapple with and understanding again, like when I do work with, I see those possibilities, but having to keep that yes in check. But yeah, so that was, I feel like for me, just a major mindset shift for myself, which was in turn very helpful for me on this path and journey of doing that deep work in myself that I needed to, that has shown up in the work that I do with clients.
I'm going to go check out that book. I've not read it. Look forward to it.
Yeah, it's a good one. I actually brought it for my kids. I don't know if I know one started it. I can't say the other one did or did.
They'll read it when they're ready.
Stop me, right? It doesn't stop me from buying them books and sending them anyway.
Totally. Well, Kiva, thank you so much. I cannot wait for my audience to listen to your words of wisdom. You have so much magic and fire to share.
Thank you so much, Catherine, for having me. I always love talking with you, so it was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening today to this episode of the Prosperous Empath Podcast with me, Catherine Wood. Make sure you subscribe and leave a review so you don't miss an episode, and so more empaths just like you and me can find the show. As a thank you, each month, one lucky reviewer will receive a 60-minute coaching session with a member of our Unbounded Potential team. You can find all the show notes and bonus resources over at unbounded-potential.com. Thank you so much for listening and locking arms with me to bring empathy and prosperity back into the world of business.